Alrighty. Time to get going here. Welcome everybody to the Play-by-Play podcast. My name is Brendan and I am here again with Sterling, and we have a lot of really good stuff to talk about today, particularly Black Monday, what happened over the course of the week with a lot of the firings throughout the NFL, and of course the NFL playoffs. So Corey or Sterling, you said you wanted to jump in right near the beginning and talk about what was that again?
Well, it was a pretty crazy end to the week last week.
Yep,
I
that it
mean,
was.
lots of lots of crazy games ended up going to overtime. Playoffs decided on kicks. It was a stressful Sunday for me.
I imagine
Watching
it
that
was.
sloppy game in Baltimore with the Steelers. Ending with a field goal in overtime, and then apparently Mike Tomlin fell asleep during the Raiders Chargers game and didn't even see it get down to the
And
wire there. I mean, even I wasn't really watching a ton of it because you know it was 29-14 at one point, and I was like, this game's over. My mistake. Come back later and it's overtime. I'm like, what the fuck? I thought everybody said it wasn't gonna tie.
yeah, well, and then obviously you look at the Colts and the Jaguars game. That was one of the games for your Steelers that they really needed to win. And we were all kind of looking at that throughout the week going like, yeah, the Jags need to beat the Colts, but
Yeah,
it's so unlikely to happen. We were all just kind of looking at that, making the joke of, oh, it's the Raiders versus the Chargers. All they need to do is take a kneel, and then both of them are in, and which
yeah,
obviously didn't happen. But yeah, the Colts game really actually gave the Steelers hope for that game, and obviously they needed to win against Baltimore, and they did.
yeah.
And it was actually a pretty decent game to watch. I know for myself, I stopped watching the Bears game pretty much halfway through the third quarter because it was like, what's the point of even watching this team anymore? And yeah, it was then going into that Chargers Raiders game. It was a phenomenal football game.
Yeah, yeah, it really was. I mean, you know me. I said it last week. I had all the confidence that the Jags were going to beat the Colts. I mean, in Jacksonville, the Colts hadn't won there in 7 years, and it's Carson Wentz. As long as that Jags defense was able to stop Jonathan Taylor, I knew they wouldn't be able to win because Carson Wentz chokes under that pressure.
Oh, and I think everyone knew if you have to put a pressure situation for Carson Wentz, it was going to be a royal struggle for him to do. And it ultimately did kind of turn out to, you're just kind of like watching Carson Wentz going like, wow, like all you need to do is win this game and you're in. And you are proving
Right?
that you are not capable of getting that done.
I mean, it was a bit of an important game for Trevor Lawrence too. I felt like he was playing to showcase himself. Showing off to the potential head coaches out there, going, "Hey, I do still have the talent. I might have been overlooked this year because I had a crazy ass head coach for the first 3 quarters, and my team didn't do anything. But we got another top 5 pick, and we're gonna be good next year. Come coach me."
Well, exactly. Jacksonville looks like a really, really good team to go to, obviously, because you do have that situation with Trevor Lawrence, and then you also have the second, or no, they have the first overall pick. So they could go out there and get either Thibodeau or Hutchinson and just have, a guy, whoever they decide to choose, because I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer on both sides, but it is one of those things, whoever they choose, they're gonna be able to pair off him and Jonathan or Josh Allen and have just a fearsome edge rushing tandem. Like
Oh,
that is gonna be
exactly. Well, and the
terrifying.
fact that they've already got Josh Allen, though, makes me consider that, like, if I was the Jaguars, I might even look at trading out of one of those top spots to get some more draft capital to build more tools around Trevor Lawrence. Like, if you can trade down into the first round lower and maybe get yourself a third and a fourth as well on top of that, more pieces you can add to that puzzle.
Oh, without a doubt. But it is one of those things where I think the Jaguars, whoever comes in as head coach, because I don't remember if they did end up firing the GM, but Obviously, I know for a fact, head coach, they're going to want to get kind of that superstar player, because you're looking at Hutchinson and Thibodeau going like, both of these guys are really can't miss prospects, which is, it's just so tempting. So tempting.
It is, and that's the only reason why I think they could get some big draft capital out of it, because other teams would be looking at that and going, wait, the Jags are going to offer us up that pick? I mean, yeah, we'll sell you 3 or 4 picks to get
For sure.
that big edge rusher.
For sure.
As you and I have discussed in past weeks, it's a really deep draft for edge rushers. So maybe you don't get that superstar, but you could still get a solid piece later in the first round or even in the second or third round that's going to complement that defense really well.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. It is one of those things where this class is really deep. Like getting the 4th or 5th top edge rusher in this class, you're still getting a fairly good player at that position. Yeah. And you know, it could also be a situation where the Jags look at it and go, we have a really talented guy in Josh Allen. There's this guy from Alabama named, Evan Neal. We need another offensive tackle to help protect this talented quarterback. Why not go out and pick him? Because,
and they really do.
Yeah, yeah. Evan Neal is a player that the Jags do need, and taking a tackle is not frowned upon with the first overall pick, especially if he is a superstar quality. And
right.
This guy is.
Because, I mean, while Trevor Lawrence does have some legs under him that he can use, he's really showcased that he's more of that traditional pocket passer style of quarterback. And you gotta start building those pockets for him so he can really showcase his skills and shine. Too many times this season when I was watching the Jags, it was like watching a tall version of Russell Wilson. He's running for his life and trying to throw the ball.
Yeah, yeah. And with a young, talented kid like Lawrence is, you want to keep him protected. You want to keep him protected. Like, look at what happened to Justin Fields and Zach Wilson this year, who just had bad protection. They got hurt. Yep. And, it hurt both of their teams, and it hurt their development. If it's only a little bit, it's still hurting development, and you don't want to see a guy like Lawrence go down. You want him to continue to build that chemistry and continue to get comfortable. But yeah, going over to...
If enough teams pass on Evan Neal, then he can come to Pittsburgh. Though, now I'm really not sure what we're going to do. We've made the playoffs now. If we manage to make a deep run in the playoffs, we're going to be picking so far back in the first that it's, going to be old school Pittsburgh where it's, we can't get one of these superstars. It's just building for depth again.
Which, again, has always been Pittsburgh's way.
Yeah.
And
one of the reasons I'm such a fan of them.
Yeah, and that success has really not plummeted them too badly.
No.
Yeah. But moving on to that
I would say
Chargers
it's a good
game.
thing when you don't pick in the top 15 pretty much ever.
Yeah. It's okay if you do it every once in a while, but, you only want to do that once every 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe the last time we did was 18 years ago when we drafted Ben Roethlisberger.
I do not know the facts, but that does indeed sound correct, because Big Ben immediately came out as a rookie and took the team to the playoffs.
Well, and the worst record he's had in his career was 8-8.
Yep. So yeah, Chargers, Raiders, that game, I think everyone kind of looked at that game going like, this is going to be a good game, because both of these teams, no one ever thought that the Raiders and Chargers were just going to take a Neal and just do that for the entire game. No one thought that. No. It was a funny thing that all of us in the media world were talking about, going, theoretically, they could do this, and they're both in the playoffs, but no, these two teams.
And then once it got to overtime, you saw them both consider it as well. Even Herbert was on the sideline going, "We just need to tie. We just need the tie." And
he actually had a saying, like, someone picked up the auto. He goes, "I've never wanted a tie so badly in my life." And, I think when the world saw that, we all just kind of laughed and went, "We feel you, but no." If this game somehow magically ends in a time, if this game ends in a tie, the NFL's rigged. I think that's what the NFL world was thinking, but the Raiders pulled it out.
The game was in Vegas, and I was even seeing Steelers fans in the stands with their heads in their hands, just going, "Oh my God, how can this happen?"
Please no, please God no.
right?
Yeah, I think it is really, really fortunate that the Steelers ended up getting in there. That you got Steelers fans basically have to be sending all of their thanks to Raiders fans just because it really was a situation where the Raiders pulled out a game. Honestly, they probably shouldn't have won that game looking at it, but they pulled through.
Yep, yep, they did. Yeah, and that was a good game. For the first year of Week 18, that was really good. And now Ben Roethlisberger can retire undefeated in Week 18 games.
Fair enough, yeah. But going off of that, we are going to quickly take a look at all of the head coaches because obviously Black Monday occurred this week, and when stuff like this occurs, it is really, really big news. We all knew there was firings that were going to happen. You look at guys like Matt Nagy, and
Yep.
I'm just going to pull up the list here. But yeah, you look at guys like Matt Nagy, Mike Zimmer, Vic Fangio going to the end of the week, you're like, yeah, these guys are probably gone.
Yeah.
And even to an extent, Joe Judge after those last 2 weeks of the season, you're like, yeah, this is like you could see him being fired. He was obviously fired on Tuesday as opposed to Monday, but
100%. Because those Giants were playing against third stringers on Sunday in that last game, and they still got destroyed.
And not only destroyed, they looked bad. They looked bad.
They did.
I think the big surprise to everyone was Brian Flores.
Yes. Yeah, that was a big shocker to a lot of people. There's so many reports coming out, and some have been claimed to be true, some not true. But like the big one that caught my attention was the rumor that all season long he had been encouraging the NFL to randomly test Tagovailoa for PEDs, which I think is just so uncalled for if that's true. Like, that's your quarterback. Even if it's not the quarterback you wanted, that's your quarterback. You need to be backing him up. If you were really out there trying to nail him for PEDs just because he came back from an injury and he was looking really good, like, that's unacceptable. And if that's true, then Tua did a phenomenal job bringing that Dolphins team back from a 1-7 start or something like that.
Yeah, it was a horrendous start.
And they were still in the playoff race on Sunday there on the last week. So absolutely insane.
Yeah, I look at what Flores was capable of doing, and he had a quarterback he didn't want on a team that, let's be real, last year was looking like a team that was going to be in the top 5, and they went 10-6, and there was injuries, there was COVID issues, and they just had that horrific start. And most teams, when you are 1-7 going into week 9 or week 10, it is one of those things where you just look at, you're like, the season's done. And
right?
They can manage to get, did they finish with an even record, or did they get 9 wins or 8 wins? How many wins did they end up finishing with?
I'm not 100% sure. I'll take a quick look for us here.
But yeah, regardless if it was 7, 8, or 9, that is still massively impressive to just even keep that team together for as long as they have. Because most teams would have quit.
Oh yeah.
With a start to the season like that.
Nads.
Yeah, right. You gotta love them. But yeah, I think the Flores pick is definitely one of those ones that came out of nowhere. And obviously there's so many reports popping up this year or this week about what's been happening with Flores, saying like, oh, he basically straight up said to Tua, I don't want you, I don't care about you. You look at it, how much of this is true and how much of this is Miami Dolphins media personalities being told, hey, we need you to come up with some stuff, or maybe stretch some of the information a little bit more and kind of make it look better for us, going like, oh, we fired him because he's such a bad guy, like he hated his players, yada yada yada. You're also looking at Flores going into some of these meetings, and you're hearing the interviews that he's had. For instance, he had the interview with the Bears today, and reports are coming out from the Bears media that have heard some of the things and they're saying, well, he's talking to the teams and saying, and giving his own story on this, because obviously it needs to be addressed. Teams aren't just going to look at this and go, oh, well, that's media, so who knows what could be true. Fake news, potentially. They're going to ask him about it, and he's going to have to tell his side of the story, and then they're going to go from there.
Right, and that would be a concerning one for the Bears, because if any of that is true, and Flores comes into Chicago and has a dislike for Justin Fields, then all of a sudden that Bears organization is in the same boat as the Dolphins. And
I
they
agree.
started 1-7, and then they finished their season 8-1.
Yeah, so
9-8 total,
which is insanely good to have a flip just like that. Like, most teams can't do that. You often see teams start out really, really hot. For instance, they might go like 7-1, and then the rest of the year they completely just have that opposite flip of where they're like 1-7. But it's very rare that you'll see the opposite happen, especially in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the opposite kind of did happen to Baltimore. They got hit with all those injuries. They started out, what was it, 7-3 or something like that, and then they just completely tanked the rest of the.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at another firing that happened, this was on Thursday that this ended up happening, was David Culley of the Texans. I have never been a fan of firing a coach after 1 year. It has to be a very serious thing for me to have your team fire a coach after 1 year, and I just don't think that the Texans really gave Culley a chance.
Well, that's just it, especially after such a tumultuous year. Like there was all that drama around Deshaun Watson, which was taking away from their abilities on field, and as a result, you're not playing with your top quarterback. They were missing a lot of pieces. They're really in a rebuild phase. Like, if you're going to bring a coach in, you got to give him more than 1 year if you don't have a superstar lineup already.
And that's just the thing, is that everyone knew going into this year, the Texans were kind of one of those teams you're like, they could honestly win 0 games this year and no one would be surprised.
Yeah.
No one was saying that about the Detroit Lions this year. Everyone looked at the Lions and were like, they're going to be a bad team, but not as bad as we expected for those first, that first 3 quarters of the season.
Right, until the Steelers handed them a tie, and then they suddenly got some confidence.
Exactly. But the Texans weren't supposed to be a good team. They were supposed to be the team that lost all games this year. They might have had 1, maybe 2. They were going to select the best quarterback available because obviously Watson wasn't going to be there anymore. And with what Culley was capable of doing, obviously he had a 3rd round pick at quarterback playing for him the entire year and doing a fairly serviceable job. Like, Mills did a decent job at playing, and the organization sounds like they actually really like him. But also having that Deshaun Watson cloud over top all year, it made it really tough for him. And some of the reports that I heard of why they fired him, it's just like, oh, he didn't really want to make staff changes, and like he wasn't abiding by the Texans kind of way of philosophy. It's like, well, your last guy that you had, he just had no control. This guy wanted to kind of keep his team around. Obviously, he didn't have the best offense. He had the 32nd ranked offense, which, as a Bears fan, I'm shocked to hear that there was a worse offense than Chicago's. But he said he wanted to keep his offensive coordinator. He was going to kind of let him develop, because obviously they were a bad team. They got hit with injuries on offense. They lost, obviously, one of the best quarterbacks in the league because he basically just said, I don't want to play for you. So what did you expect to happen there? You bring in even a phenomenal offensive coordinator with all the pieces that they have, they might only go up a couple of spots.
Right, and it's so unfortunate and unfair to David Culley because he's been coaching for so long, and he really deserved a fair shake at the head coach. And now it makes me wonder if any of these teams with vacancies are going to give him that opportunity right away, or if he's going to have to drop back and start doing some OC work again before he gets that nudge back up into a head coaching position.
Well, that's one of the things, obviously, from the Bears media point that I saw was I heard a report that I actually really liked that says if the Bears hire a defensive-minded head coach, we need to go bring in Culley because he is such a phenomenal offensive mind. He just didn't have an opportunity in Houston.
Yep.
Which, to myself, I wouldn't mind, for instance, if the Bears did bring in Flores. I would honestly think Cully would be a decent option.
That actually would be a really good tandem, yeah. Flores and Cully going to the Bears. That would really turn around the mentality and the mindset.
Yeah. One thing kind of going back to Flores, one thing that I do like about Flores is when he got hired with Miami, I looked at him and I said, he gives me very Mike Tomlin type of vibe, of
Yeah,
where he is one of those guys where he wants the best and he's going to do the best what he thinks is available for the team. He doesn't care if you are a top free agent that comes in. If a rookie is outplaying you, he's going to play you. So I've always kind of got that Flora or that Tomlin vibe from Flores.
definitely, yeah. I mean that's a good guy to model your career after. He's been one of the most successful coaches in the last 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of going over the entire list. Obviously, the first head coach that was let go this year was John Gruden of the Raiders. Obviously, there were so many issues that popped up. Obviously, with Washington scandals, and he was a part of that. I think the Raiders probably would have ended up firing Gruden at the end of the year if the season hadn't gone the way that it needed to go, because I think a lot of Raiders fans were kind of annoyed with him.
Right. And that speaks to the toughness of the Raiders too. Like you lost your head coach early in the season. You lost one of your best wide receivers to a stupid decision that he made himself.
Yep.
And there was so much negative media and drama surrounding the Raiders, especially after all the question marks for so many years about should we even put a team in Las Vegas? Will the kids be able to control themselves?
Yep.
The fact that they still made the playoffs, that's really impressive.
Yeah, and the fact that they also lost they had to end up cutting their first round corner that was a couple
Yep.
years ago because he was carrying around a gun and making death threats to people. And you're
Yep.
just looking at that. I made the joke to my dad, who is a big Raiders fan. Hide Darren Waller, because I don't think if Darren Waller comes out with an issue, Derek Carr might just fall out and completely on spiral because he just
Right.
can't have this anymore.
It's like some of these guys forgot that they're not in Oakland anymore, where that's just commonplace everyday behavior for everybody who lives there.
Yeah, and it really is true. Like that Raiders room is built differently because they were able to not only continue to fight after losing players to such negative ways, but also being able to deal with the fact that their head coach left in such a horrific way, and they had a replacement head coach for the entire season, it seemed like, and they were able to not only play well but play better with their the interim head coach than with Gruden. I'm forgetting who the interim head coach's name is at the moment, but I honestly think the Raiders should seriously consider making him the head coach moving forward because of how good of a job he's been able to do.
I agree. Yeah, like they need to just give him a fair shake for a full season. Like, here, you did a good job. You turned this team around. We're gonna keep you for next year and see if you can do the same.
Yeah, Rich Posada, thank you. Yeah, and then moving over to Urban Meyer, who was the next head coach to go. I know you and I have talked about this before. Obviously, this was kind of earlier when it happened, but Urban Meyer, I think it was week 2 or 3, where after a loss that the Jags had, he was pictured at a nightclub groping a woman. You're just like, really, what is going on there?
Right, didn't even travel back with the team or anything. Like, what a dumbass.
Yeah, and with the Jags, I know you and I have both said this before, but it felt really, really weird. The fact that the Jags would go down this route where you have a guy who has so many issues throughout his college career. Every single time that he left a program, it was because it was an issue. He didn't leave, or he didn't get fired. He left because it was the more optimal situation to do. Then he'd go to a new team and say things would be different, this, that, and the other thing, and then you would have whole new scandal, whole new issue. And then what did he say when he got interviewed or when he got selected to be the next head coach for the Jags? Things are gonna be different. I'm more mature now. I've learned. Same Urban Meyer.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah, and so I'm those two guys definitely will not be coming back next year. Neither of them's going to get an NFL job. I'm sure Urban Meyer will go find some beleaguered college team that's willing to take him on and just take that added media presence to build their program a little better.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Urban Meyer. He's going to go back to the media this year for college
Yeah.
football, talk about what happened, be really, remorseful of the situations and what he's learned. And then the following year, some team is going to say, "Hey, Urban, do you want a job in college?" And he's go, "Yep." And then he's
Right.
going to turn that team into a national champion for a couple of years. And then it's just going to be the same repeating cycle over and over and
Oh
over
yeah.
again.
Yeah, because that's what I've always said about Urban Meyer is he's just a really highly paid scout. He's really good at finding and developing young talent. Um, I've never really had a lot of faith in his actual coaching ability because anytime he's playing in like close games, that's when he starts making mistakes as a coach.
I do think he is a capable college coach. I don't
Oh,
think
he's
the NFL.
capable.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just don't think he's like top tier. He's a better scout than he is a coach.
he's a phenomenal recruiter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then moving on to the Denver's head coach Vic Fangio getting fired. I know a lot of Denver Broncos fans wanted him out.
Yeah.
There were some people that still had hope, but most of them were pretty done with him at the moment. It's really hard not to see why. They have a really phenomenal young offense, and they also have a pretty decent defense. Obviously, it's not the same defense that they once were, but they have a lot of really good young core, and he was just making a lot of really weird mistakes. Obviously, not calling timeouts when he needed to call timeouts, and you're just kind of looking at him going like what are some of the reasons that you made some of these decisions?
Yeah, he never really was a very good game manager.
No, I do think the Broncos moving on from Fangio was probably the smart thing to do, but Fangio was never really the true issue in Denver, and I've been saying this for years. I will continue to say it. The Broncos will never be successful again if they do not get rid of Elway. Yes, Elway basically runs that team and owns that team at this point, but to me, you need to get him out of the organization.
Yeah, because he doesn't seem to be building for the future very well. He always builds a team for now, and it keeps falling apart because they just don't mesh well unless you end up with that superstar quality quarterback like they did with Peyton Manning that year. And like maybe this year they end up with Aaron Rodgers and they have a 1 year run, and then they'll be right back in the basement.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Elway seems to not be able to bring in quarterbacks unless it's this superstar high quality caliber where he just goes, come,
Right.
take on my legacy like he did with Peyton and the possibility of Aaron Rodgers. But again, you can't say Aaron Rodgers is going to be there for sure, especially
No.
now with, him saying, him and Green Bay have started to work things out and talk about these issues. He might stay in Green Bay. So what's Denver gonna do? They clearly passed up on a couple of quarterbacks last year in the draft.
Yep.
Teddy Bridgewater is definitely not the answer. And you look at Drew Lock and you have to say like he has moments, but so did Trubisky, so
Hmm.
did some of all of these other busts that have come out. They've had moments, but moments are great, but they're only moments.
Well, and I mean they're asking these young guys to do it themselves because again, Elway isn't building a quality team around these young guys. That's the issue. Elway is a quarterback. He's got that quarterback mindset, and he's like, all I need is a quarterback. It doesn't matter who else is. It's like, no, man, this is a team game.
Yep,
You need quality at every position.
that you do.
And I don't know if Broncos fans are content with every 5 or 6 years. Maybe they make the playoffs because they've got some about to retire quarterback and they do well, and then they lose a bunch of games for 4 or 5 years. Like that's how you want to live, then great. But I'd much rather be a fan of a team where you're getting playoffs every year, only occasionally missing.
Yeah, yeah. I would rather have a situation where I am able to bring in a young talent and develop him into a superstar, as opposed to having just these kind of bridge quarterbacks until you can get a phenomenal guy looking like he's kind of at the end of his career.
Yeah.
Obviously, when they had Peyton Manning, this is one of those things for me that I always look at Elway being not the guy, is the year when Russell Wilson was drafted and he ended up going with Brock Osweiler. And the only reason he went with Brock Osweiler because of his height. He looked at
Yeah.
Russell Wilson and said, he's too short to succeed. While you're looking at him going, I mean, he's been being called too short and not being able to succeed at every single level, whether it's high school or college, and he's succeeded every single spot that he's been able to go. So
Yep.
what makes you think he's not going to be capable of being an NFL quarterback? Then he gets drafted by Seattle, and the rest is history. Wins a Super Bowl, goes to another Super Bowl, and if Pete Carroll decided to just run with Marshawn Lynch, he would have been a back-to-back Super Bowl champion.
Exactly. Should have been a back. Russell Wilson in that situation, I audible to a run.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
fuck you, Pete Carroll. I've got Marshawn Lynch standing beside me. I am not throwing this ball.
No. And you have 3 timeouts, you have a first down, and there's 30 seconds left on the clock. You can afford to do a little bit about that. But we're not here to talk about Pete Carroll's, failures in there. But yeah, Vic Fangio, I do agree, needed to move on from the Broncos. Next up, we have Mike Zimmer, fired from the Vikings. He was their head coach for, it seemed like forever. I think it was 8 years he was the head coach. This was something that I feel was 2 years too late.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like he felt the same way. He knew he was walking to the end of his time in Minnesota, and he was just doing his best to keep his head above water. He's the first one we've talked about here today, though, that I think will find a new job right away in the NFL. I think one of these teams, maybe the Giants, Dolphins, or the Jags, will likely go after Mike Zimmer.
I think they are going to go after Mike Zimmer for more of a coordinator position as opposed to a head coach.
Oh, probably, but it sort of depends what else is available out there. I know there's a couple of OCs that are looking to move up. It depends where they land, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is, Zimmer is an okay candidate. The reason that if I'm one of these teams that I do not want to go with Zimmer as my head coach is he's been able to have some really, really good looking teams with that Minnesota Vikings, but he's gone nowhere with them, and he just constantly keeps making personnel decisions where you're like, what are you doing there? Like, are you sure about that? It's tough, but the Vikings definitely needed to move on from Zimmer. I think their next move is to move on from Kirk Cousins now. They can completely get away from that kind of core that they kind of built with those two for a while, and they can actually potentially start to look like a dangerous team if they get themselves a quarterback.
Yeah. And Kirk Cousins, I believe, still has 1 year left on his contract, or is he a free agent this year?
He has another year, I believe.
Yeah, he has another year. So, I mean, getting rid of him, sure, but it might be a good idea to keep him on as that bridge until you get there. They should definitely be looking to draft or find their next quarterback this year, though. And then you've got Kirk Cousins there as maybe some trade bait that you can get some draft capital with throughout next season.
Yep. So we have 2 head coaches that we have yet to talk about. I'm going to skip over the next head coach that was fired because that's going to be a conversation. We're going to move over to Joe Judge. I know we touched on him just a little bit earlier on, but we didn't really kind of dive deep into it. Yeah, this was a move that needed to be made. It happened on Tuesday as opposed to Monday. The Giants sat down with Judge on Monday, and they kind of made the decision later in the night and then announced it Tuesday morning. But yeah, the Giants were going up in the final week playing against essentially third string players, and they were getting blown out of the water. They didn't look good when they played the Bears. I think it was either a week prior to or 2 weeks prior to the final week of the season. They also looked very, very bad against they made the Bears offense look like the Chiefs offense.
Right.
That's how bad the Giants team was. They made this subpar Bears team that couldn't do anything, and they made them look like the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that Giants organization, they need to work everything over top to bottom. Like
Which
really,
they have.
aside from Saquon Barkley, what do they really have in New
Yeah, they have James Bradbury, who is a corner, but he's also getting up there in age. So how can you reliably rely on him if he's getting up there in age? But yeah, even Saquon. You look at Saquon, he hasn't been the same player since he got hurt.
No.
Is he still a threat and one of those guys that you desperately want out on the field? Yeah, of course. You
Oh
always
yeah,
want
if
him
they
out
could
there.
get a passing game going and get somebody in there that could do a good job. Not that Daniel Jones hasn't. It's just I don't know if he's quite the guy. I think they reached too far for him in that draft, and they started him too soon.
Well, with that draft, you look back at it, there was really only four guys that people were considering. Obviously, Kyler Murray,
Hmm.
who has blossomed into a franchise quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. He is easily one of the reasons why that team is succeeding as well as they are. You have Daniel Jones, who was selected by the Giants, who people just kind of didn't really know too much about. They looked at him and went like, yeah, he's athletic, but he also has issues keeping the ball. Like that was his big issue in college, was maintaining the ball, so they needed to clean that up. Obviously, into the NFL, that didn't happen. He was the most turnover prone quarterback in the league, whether it was interceptions or fumbles. Then you had Dwayne Haskins, who was, you know, questionable at best.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and then
he
turned out to
said
be a bust.
he had success at Ohio State, but he went to the wrong system, I believe, and then he just let his own demons throw him
Yeah,
completely out. And then obviously you had Drew Lock get drafted by the Broncos in the second round, and he just didn't pan out. Fangio could not develop him.
yeah.
And that a good point in the chat being brought up is that their OC didn't really have a clue what to do with their offense and wasn't able to develop it. So they need to get new head coach, new offensive coordinator, and be able to develop some of these guys. But yeah, the only guy out of that class to really do something was Murray.
Yep.
But yeah, I do agree with you. You the Giants didn't really have a proper plan in place for Daniel Jones. They definitely reached for him. Without a doubt they did, because they drafted him, I think it was 6. And it was a shock to everyone because I'm pretty sure they had a second first round pick later in the draft that they were kind of looking at as potentially using a quarterback. I could be wrong on that, but still the point is that no one thought Daniel Jones was going to be that pick.
Well, no, I mean, as far as I recall, no one even thought Daniel Jones was going to go in the first round. He was slated more as an early second round, maybe even falling to the third round, just because of all those questions around his ability to protect the football.
I know everyone said that Daniel Jones, for me at least, when I was scouting that class, Daniel Jones was my definite 3. I thought he was a first round talent, but he needed to go much later in the draft. Honestly, I thought he was an option potentially for the Steelers to potentially come in and grab, just because that's where the Steelers were. They needed to develop a guy under Ben, and Haskins was my preferred choice for that team, but I thought he was going to be gone. But yeah,
And he was, yeah.
yep.
Yeah, because I remember the Steelers were considering trading up to try and get Haskins in that draft.
And now that he's on the Steelers, he has done nothing.
He texts a lot. That's about it. Plays on his phone.
Yep. Now,
But yeah, I don't know what it is about that Ohio State organization, but they get a lot of quarterbacks drafted, but they often don't do very much.
well, funny enough, they don't actually get a whole lot of quarterbacks drafted. The last guy, obviously Fields, was very highly recruited or very highly touted. Haskins was kind of the first guy in a while that had been
Yeah.
that first round pick, and pretty much all the guys after, they kind of had that Alabama effect of where they would have a quarterback be drafted rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, and undrafted free agency. But Haskins was kind of that first guy that really was kind of the superstar quarterback for them, and then Fields came in and said, "Nope, sit down, it's my turn."
Yeah.
And now they're kind of slowly turning into more of like we're really producing some of these quarterbacks at a high level.
Yeah,
But
unless Fields ends up falling flat as well, then teams may start looking at Ohio State again and going, you know what, maybe we shouldn't put a whole lot of faith in this quarterback.
yeah,
Because
it's
it
kind
is,
of
it's
looking
an
at
option
Alabama.
offense, and you're coming into the NFL, which is, very rarely do you see an option being the primary focus of an offense.
Well, not only that, you need to look at it going the NFL. It's a read first primary defense,
Yeah.
and teams have plays that are option available, but that's not what you're focusing your entire offense on. It's being able to go from one read to the other and making good decisions. And
Yeah.
with Fields at Ohio State, that was one of the biggest knocks on him is they said he can't read a defense. It's like, well, we don't know if he can read a defense or not because Ohio State is you snap the ball, either you pass it to you hand it off to the running back, or you make a quick read and throw the ball, or you just let him
run it yourself,
or you just let Fields with his freak athleticism do it himself, and that's what the situation was. And
well, that sort of brings us to that last coach in. Matt Nagy was finally fired by the Bears, which has to make you happy. But who's the head coach that they can bring in that's going to really help Justin Fields develop that ability to read the field and be more patient in the pocket, go through his reads before deciding to break off and run.
Well, and that's just the thing is that the Chicago Bears have sat down and they said, we are going to interview everyone for this head coach spot. They have sent meetings out to essentially every available candidate, which I'm actually really happy about that they've done, is that they're not narrowing it down to, oh, we want an offensive-minded head coach. Like they did last time with Trubisky. Yeah. They've come out and said, they want a leader of men. That's their focus. So to me, that kind of sounds like one of three options at the moment. That sounds like Brian Flores, it sounds like Doug Peterson, or it sounds like Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Which I would be more than happy with all three of those options.
Yeah, all three of those would be really good options for sure.
But for me, I look at it like this. The Bears need to go out and get the best available guy. You can't have that tunnel vision of going, we want to focus on an offensive-minded head coach or defensive-minded or a leader of men, this, that. You go out and get the best guy.
Yeah. And you make sure he's a guy that, let them have some conversations with Justin Fields and make sure that they're on the same page and that he wants Justin Fields as a quarterback.
And that's just
the thing.
Want
is a Miami Dolphins situation where you get a head coach in there who's like, yeah, I want to turn this team around, but I need a different quarterback.
Exactly. And, a report came out yesterday that said Matt Nagy from day one didn't want Mitch Trubisky as his quarterback. No. And coming into an organization, if you don't want the guy that's there, either you have to tell the organization, listen, this isn't my guy, we need to move on from him, or you need to be the guy going in there going, I want this guy. Flores, when going into this year's draft, there was a lot of reports that he really liked Fields. He loved the look of Fields. Obviously, he had Tua, so who knows with that?
Right, because they are kind of similar in play style.
Flores never wanted Tua. That's kind of the reports that were coming out. I think Tua and Fields play the game differently. I think Tua is more of a run first, and I'm going to kind of throw to my first option. Fields is more of like a Dak Prescott type of player.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But yeah, I was, I wasn't shocked after seeing what was happening in that Bears game, week 18. It was, yeah, you're basically going on your way out. The fact that he looked at his offense and said, we are going for it on 4 different 4th and 1 occasions, and we're going to throw the ball every single time. And he has a running back in David Montgomery who doesn't matter if he gets hit 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, he's getting himself a yard.
Right? Welcome to my hell, friend. How many times did Matt Canada call a friggin' screenplay or a slant on 4th and 1 this season when it's like you got Najee Harris in the backfield. You drafted him in the first round. Give him the ball and let him see what he can do.
Yeah. To the point where David Montgomery is on the sidelines after the 3rd occasion. he slams his helmet into the ground, and he just didn't look like he wanted to play anymore. It was like,
Right.
yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's decisions like that that get a coach fired. Matt Nagy knew he was getting fired. Like Ian Rappaport said, I think he said it on the Pat McAfee show. He goes, "Did you ever have any conversations with these coaches? Basically, did they know they were getting fired? Like, for instance, Matt Nagy." Rappaport goes, "You know, Nagy, he didn't necessarily say he was going to get fired. Like, nothing had been confirmed. Obviously, that Thanksgiving Day situation that happened, you know, he didn't get told he was going to get fired, but he always knew. Like, he would tell people, it's like, yeah, like, this is a real strong possibility. So, like, he knew. Like, they all
Well,
knew.
that raises some questions too. Who's to say if maybe that doesn't get leaked to the media and they do fire Matt Nagy after that Thanksgiving Day game? Who's to say the Bears don't turn it around at that point? Playoffs.
Well, and that's just the thing is that look at what happened with the Raiders.
Yep,
They
exactly.
Gruden goes away and they look kind of lost for a couple weeks, and then they flip a switch, and now they're a playoff team.
Yep.
And I feel this is the perfect segment to jump into talking about the playoff games this week. Obviously, the first one is against the Cincinnati Bengals and the Las Vegas Raiders. I want your kind of feed. Who do you think's taking that game? What do you think about it?
Well, and yeah, we got to get into this because that game kicks off in an hour now. So we want to start talking about that. I mean, both these teams are looking really good coming in. You know, the Raiders, as we talked about, they went on a run after John Gruden finally got out of there, and they got that media behind them. And David Carr is really excited to get his first playoff game going, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I think that the Raiders are going to look really good today. This is going to be one of the best games of the weekend, I think. Because even the Bengals have looked phenomenal. You know, they lit up the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. Granted, they lost to the Browns in Week 18,
But
but
they were resting a lot of players
I was going to say, I
after
don't
about the
think they were
first
playing
quarter.
most of their starters there.
Yeah, about after the
But
first quarter, even if they had any of their starters in. Like, this was a game, they had already made the playoffs. They did not care about seeding. They're like, we are getting healthy and resting for the week. It
if
was a
anything,
no-nonsense game.
that could be their downfall because the Raiders played a meaningful game last Sunday with
They
a
have the
lot of
momentum.
intensity that came right down to the wire, and they have a lot of momentum and a lot of passion.
Yeah.
Some of the Bears were sitting; they might be a little slow to get going. So if the Raiders can come out and put some points up early in the first quarter and make Joe Burrow throw it a lot, if they can shut down Jamar Chase, then the Raiders, I think, will be able to take it. You know, myself, I'm looking at seeding because my Steelers are in, and I'm like, man, if the Bengals can go through to the conference championship as well as the Steelers, I would love to go into Cincinnati for the AFC championship because I think the Steelers would easily make short work of the Bengals in that game.
Yep.
But in reality, I think the Raiders are winning this game.
So going back to this game, again, like you said, this is probably going to be the best game of the weekend. This honestly might have the makings of one of the best games this entire playoffs.
Yeah.
Because obviously you have the Raiders who are coming off of a really meaningful game. It was passionate for them, and they fought like hell to end up winning that football game.
Yep.
But you also have the Bengals who have ice in his veins, Joey Burrow, and the last time he was in a playoff situation, he came out and he looked at everyone else and said, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you've done, I'm the best player here, fuck all of you, this is my time to shine. And
Yep.
you know, that connection between Joey Burrow and Jamar Chase, he obviously joked about this to the media where he goes, you know, sometimes you just got to do that meme and say, F it, Jamar's out there somewhere and throwing the ball.
Yeah.
And when they have that connection that they do, it's really, really tough. And I think a lot of people forget they have Joe Mixon, running back, who is a phenomenal, I would honestly say, top 5 back in the league.
This season, he definitely was, yes.
Mm-hmm. Not just this season. I think the last 2 years, he's just proven to everyone that he's one of those guys. And they also have Tyler Higbee out there as well from a wide receiver standpoint. Their defense shocked a lot of people this year and were playing really, really well.
and that's going to be a key for the Raiders is they're gonna have to shut down Jamar Chase, and they're gonna have to make sure that Joe Mixon doesn't end up running all over them because of that.
Yeah.
You know, and then on the other side of the ball, they have to protect Carr.
Yep.
Because as you and I have discussed, when he is calm in the pocket and has time, he's one of the most accurate passers in the league. But as soon as that pass rush starts getting near him, that's when he panics and he starts throwing those mistakes.
Yep. He gets scared, throws the ball away. There's just something that happens to him that just isn't right. But another thing with Carr is that they're playing in Cincinnati, and they said the weather in Cincinnati is supposed to only be like around like the 20s.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a cold
chilly.
game. It's a cold game, and Carr is 0-5 playing in games under 40.
Ooh, that's not good for the Raiders. Yeah, and in the chat there, that was going to be my next point. On the flip side of that Raiders defense, they have to get pressure on Joe Burrow.
Yep.
You know, they got to get in there. They got to make him make fast passes. Not let the plays develop where Jamar Chase can get 40 yards down the field. Because when he's down the field and one-on-one, he's going to go up and he's going to moss these guys and make big plays.
Yes. I personally, for myself, I'm going to take the Bengals. I feel they have home field advantage, and Joe Burrow, I think he's going to go back to that national championship game mindset that he had, of where you just looked at him and you're like, okay, yeah, this game has already been decided before kickoff.
I think he is. He's going to be that old school, really good quarterback. But the thing is, this isn't college ball, and he's not going to be able to win the game by himself like he could in college.
Yeah.
You know, this is, and that's where my question comes in. It's been so long since the Cincinnati Bengals have had any sort of playoff opportunities or success, that what is the rest of the team? Is the defense going to show up? Are they going to be able to get that pressure on Derek Carr to get him to make mistakes, or is he just going to be able to tear up that Bengal defense? Because I think if it comes down to a shootout and it's a high scoring game, the Raiders take it. Whereas if it comes down to last possession and it's been a tight fought game and really gritty, then Joe Burrow will be able to pull it out on that final drive if he gets the ball last.
Yeah. But again, this is one of those games that I think you and I are really excited to watch.
Yep.
Again, it's probably going to be the best game this weekend. So the only thing that we can really say is this is going to be a game to watch, and I'm excited to watch this game happen.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's going to be both a good and a bad thing for both of these teams, because whichever team does walk away with the win is going to be real beat up going into next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough fought game.
Yeah.
Next game that we have here up on the schedule is now the rubber match between the Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. So I want to get your take on that.
Well, it's the Buffalo Bills against Bill Belichick. You know, and I know everybody's still on about Mac Jones and how he should be in the Rookie of the Year running and stuff, but honestly, Bill Belichick is this team still. You know, maybe in a season or two, Mac Jones can take that mantle, but right now, it comes down to that coach. If he can get the best of Josh Allen, and I believe the Bills have home field.
Yep.
It's not being played at Gillette Stadium, so that is a perk for Josh Allen and the Bills, because those fans get rowdy and it gets loud. So that's going to be really key. You know, the fans have got to get into that game, Bills, even if they start losing. Because you can get, if you can shake up Mac Jones and get him to make a couple of mistakes, then you got a real shot here. Much like you, though, I don't really believe in Josh Allen. I have a feeling he's going to drop the ball at least once, and Bill Belichick's going to take advantage of that, and unfortunately, we're going to have to see more of the Patriots next week. But I want the Bills to win. Because I'm so sick of the Patriots, I want the Bills to win, but I think the Patriots are probably going to take it. I think it's going to be a tight, low-scoring game. Belichick's just going to shut down that explosive Bills offense and probably do like he did in that snow game and just run the ball. Run the ball. Don't let Mac Jones be in any situations for any mistakes. and he's just going to wear them down.
Yeah. I think going back to that second Bills-Patriots game where the Bills ended up winning, I think what Bill was doing was he was testing the waters to see what that team could do against it.
Yeah.
Because he already knows the recipe to beat the Bills. But he was going, you know what, let's have a little bit of an experimentation here.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is exactly it. Because he is such a fucking genius when it comes to coaching. He beat them so easily in that first game that he was like, okay, I'm going to throw everything else we have at them, see how they react to it, so I can see what they might throw at us if we end up having to play them in the playoffs. And honestly, I could see the Patriots completely shutting out the Bills.
yeah, it's one of those things. The Patriots have one of the top defenses in the NFL. And from what it really boils down to me is, again, I don't believe in Josh Allen. I don't.
Yeah.
And we've always joked for years and years, you never bet against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Well, last year, everyone was betting against Tom Brady, and that went to bite him in the ass. Now it's this year going like, oh, I mean, like, the Bills are a good team this year. It's like, well, don't bet against Bill Belichick. Like, what have we been saying for the last 20 years? Don't bet against Tom Brady. Don't bet against Bill Belichick. And today, people are betting against Bill Belichick. And you just look at what happened the last two times they played. First time, they ran the ball basically every single play and made the Bills look silly. Second time, Bill Belichick was just kind of playing around. And now Bill knows everything about this team.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Bill Belichick knows exactly what he's going to do tonight, and I think he could probably, just sit in a lawn chair in his hoodie calling this game, and he would still win it.
Yeah, it is one of those things where this is going to be either a really, really good game, or it's going to be one of those ones you go, okay, and the Pats are winning, this is just going like this, I'm just going to move on to whatever's playing on TV. Time to open up Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first game that we have tomorrow, because there's only 2 games today, we have the Eagles versus the Buccaneers. So what do you think about that game?
This is the only game I'm really not sure which way it's going to go. Like, I know we talk you don't bet against Tom Brady, but he's missing a lot of tools, and he's great at improvising. I think they come out and it's going to be a very competitive game. But if any of those offensive pieces get hurt, it's just going to fall apart for the Bucs because they have very few receivers. They are getting Leonard Fournette back, so I think they're going to lean real heavily on Fournette in that run game. We're going to see a lot of screen passes to Fournette as well because he's got good hands out there. But there's question marks with his health. He takes one bad hit, and maybe he's out for the game, and that just completely deflates the Buccaneers. So if they can stay healthy, I think they're going to be able to just chip away at this Eagles team. But that being said, Jalen Hurts has something to prove. People have been down on him all year, talking about how he's not the guy, he's not an NFL caliber quarterback. And from one week to the next, you don't know which Jalen Hurts you're getting. Because some weeks he does. He looks like he's not ready for the NFL. And then other weeks he absolutely destroys. And that's what they're going to need from him to win. They're going to need an all-star quality start from Jalen Hurts. He's going to have to pass it for 300 yards. He's going to have to be running the ball for 100 yards. And he's going to have to protect it and not throw an interception. If he can do those 3 things, then the Eagles will beat the Buccaneers.
That is asking quite a lot from a young man. And
it is.
I think the Eagles, as they definitely played way above their head this year, they are going up against Tom Brady and the Bruce Arians Buccaneers, and we do need to still look at the Bucs and say, well, we want to talk about their offense and what their offense is going to do, but we also need to talk about their defense. Their defense is still a top defense. They are still a very, very tough defense to play against, and being in Tampa Bay, I look at it, this is a very, very tough game for the Eagles to win. I think the Eagles still have a lot of pieces that they're missing and they're not great at. Obviously, they played in a horrific division. Yeah. The Cowboys ran away with that, but it was kind of at that point, everyone in that division got 2 free wins against the Giants. Washington, who knows what's really happening with that team. Sometimes their quarterback play was good. Sometimes they had a new quarterback in every week, and you just didn't really know. And they had injuries places. And the Eagles at times have looked really good, but they've also looked bad. I'm taking this game as a Buccaneers win. But again, I do agree with you. If Jalen Hurts plays lights out, just unbelievable, stands on his head, 300-yard passing, 100 yards on the ground. But the big thing there is he needs to stay clean. He needs to stay turnover free.
Yeah, they got to stay clean and they got to keep their foot on the gas. Because that's just it. You can't be up by 14 or 17 against Tom Brady and go, oh, yeah, we got this in the bag. Because he's shown that even back playing the Dolphins a couple weeks ago. He down by 14. Antonio Brown throws his hissy fit. And all of a sudden, Tom Brady goes, no, I don't need you, man. I'm going to win this game without you because you're just another piece. That's it. Yeah, you go cry in the locker room. I'm going to win this game without you. And that is Tom Brady all over. He will put that team on his shoulders when he needs to. And that's why he's the GOAT. As much as I always hated watching my Steelers play against him, as much as I was cursing him multiple times every season, he is the GOAT for a reason.
Yeah. The reason that he's the GOAT, he's never had the strongest arm. He's never been able to read the defense the best in the league at any given time. He's not the most athletic guy, but what he is the best at is clutchness. There is never been a guy who's just been able to go, okay, I guess I'm doing this. We look back at 2015. Everyone remembers what happened in that Super Bowl. The 28-3 going into the fourth quarter, Tom Brady cracks his neck, cracks his knuckles, and goes, okay, guess it's time to go to work. And
exactly. Like he can make mistakes in the first quarter, second quarter, all he wants, but once you get into that second half, it's like he turns it to another level and he does not make mistakes. Like you can rush him, you can throw every type of defense you got at him. He's going to find the holes in that defense and he's going to exploit you. He learned from the best. He learned from Bill Belichick.
Yes, he did. So that's for me. I've always said every time I bet against Tom Brady, it bites me in the ass. So I've learned to never bet against Tom Brady. So I'm taking the Bucs for this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bucs win it, barring some, miraculous play from the Eagles.
Yes. So moving on to, we have an NFC matchup now with the 49ers and the Cowboys.
Yes, this is going to be another good game. Dak Prescott's had himself a really good bounce back season. Ezekiel Elliott's had a very quiet season, but he's always a presence to be reckoned with.
Yep.
However, Jimmy Garoppolo is playing like he's got something to prove. And that something is that he deserves a big contract and that he wants to play for a championship quality team. I don't know if he's playing for the Niners next year. I think the Niners go ahead with Trey Lance. So he's playing like it's an audition for all these teams that need a quarterback. Who's going to pay me the money? Who wants me?
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is he's playing for a starting job next year. Yeah. He's not playing for a backup role.
And we do got to remember that he is still playing hurt. Like that thumb of his on his throwing hand is just mangled. The fact that he managed to pull out what he did last week was really impressive. It's going to be hard to predict. I really do think that Garoppolo, being the better game manager than Dak Prescott, he's just going to slowly wear down that Dallas team. But they do have a couple of really good defenders. That's what I mean. This is one of the toughest games to pick this weekend, I think.
I'd have to agree with you. Looking at this game, I want to say the 49ers are going to win because the Cowboys, as soon as they get to the playoffs, can't do anything. But this is a different Cowboys team. Prescott is, as much as people don't like to say it, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. He is one of those guys. I don't know if he's going to be able to win a championship with this team, but they are phenomenal. And you look at their defensive side of the ball with Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. These two guys are just playing lights out, especially Parsons. You put him anywhere on the field, he's a threat. Does not matter where he is a threat. And then you do kind of look at Jimmy Garoppolo in that sense of going, okay, like, are they going to go back to that year when they went to the Super Bowl of where they essentially just ran the ball down the throat? I don't think they have the same running back core as they once did, like that year, but it is one of those things that I feel like Kyle Shanahan, he's going back to that style of offense for the playoffs, because to win in the playoffs, you need to have a strong run game, and
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan loves to make creative runs. But yeah, I think this is probably the toughest game to predict here. I'm probably going to end up picking the Cowboys just because I think they have the better overall roster. And I think when it's going to come down to quarterback play, which I think this game is ultimately going to come down to, I do take Prescott over Garoppolo.
Yeah. Yeah, see, and I agree with the running game. Like, I think the Niners are going to rely on it, and Jimmy G is going to be watching where Parsons is.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're going to see a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo and the things he learned while he was on display this Sunday.
Yeah.
And if he can keep track of Parsons and where he is on the field and exploit that and exploit the other areas of the field where he is not, that is where the Niners will be able to win it. Because that Niners defense is really good as well. And I think they're going to get after Prescott. I don't think Elliott's going to be able to get much going. And we've seen with Dak Prescott, if you can hit him a few times, he starts to get rattled. You know, especially after that ankle injury last year. He's, you know, a little bit nervous back there, you know, kind of like Derek Carr. You know, once the line starts collapsing, that pocket falls in on him, he panics a little bit.
A little bit.
And so I think that's where the Niners are going to take it. And I think it's going to be close, though. Whichever one of these quarterbacks has possession last, I think is who wins it.
Yeah, this is either going to be a really, really high scoring shootout type of game, or it is going to be insanely low, maybe one touchdown and a couple of field goals separate the game. But it's going to be one of those two teams, and I can see either team winning both ways.
Yeah. Yeah,
Moving
but I think the Niners are the team that will go on in this.
Okay, so we got a little bit of a disagreement on that. I like it. So moving over to your game, obviously you are representing the Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. That is your team.
Black and yellow.
They are going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. So talk us through it.
Well, we couldn't have drawn a better time slot. You know, I'm so happy we got that Sunday night prime time because that is when Ben Roethlisberger plays his best, and that is what we need. We need Ben Roethlisberger at his best because he is what's going to win this game for us, hands down. I'm a little worried about Najee Harris. I know they're planning on playing him, but with that elbow injury last year, last week, I would hate to see him get hurt worse in that same area because that could, you know, change the whole dynamic of the future of his career. Yep. So I would like to see them roll with that 2 running back set and get Benny Snell a lot more touches.
Which I think he will.
I think so too. And that's really what they have to do is they've got to wear down that KC defense and run the ball, and they got to keep the game close.
They have to keep the Chiefs offense off the field as much as possible. They
do. And TJ, like the deciding factor is going to be TJ Watt. You know, like the Steelers, I think they were 8-2-1 when TJ Watt got 1 sack in a game, whereas they were 0-2 when he didn't. You know, if TJ was playing and he didn't get a sack, they do not win. So he has got to get to Mahomes, and they can't give him time. They can't be letting him run around back there, you know, waiting for somebody to open up, because Tyreek Hill will get open if you let that happen.
Yeah, I hear you. This is going to be one of those games where, obviously, when you look at the Vegas betting odds and they have the Steelers at such a low percentage to win this game.
I believe the lowest in history. It is the biggest point spread for a wild card game in NFL history.
Wow.
You know, they've got the Steelers such a huge underdog, which I also like, because I mean, really, let's look at it. Steelers in prime time as the underdog, they always seem to pull out magic and do something. And you know what? I know everybody's picking the Chiefs. I have to pick the Steelers. I'm a fan. Yeah. And I think they will upset it because it's time. It's time for the Chiefs to really take one on the chin and suffer a big upset early in the playoffs because they don't have a ton outside of Mahomes. You know, you got Mahomes, you got Kelsey, you got Hill, but Edwards-Helaire is not going to be playing at running back. So they're going to be running with their second and third strings, and they did not have a strong running game this year, thank God, because the Steelers have the worst run defense in the league. They need to make sure that the Chiefs cannot run the ball on them, because if they're able to get a run game going when they're such a poor run offense, then they're just going to tear up that Steelers defense with the pass game.
Yeah,
And so
to me, I give this to the Chiefs just because they are playing home field advantage in Arrowhead. And it's kind of like saying Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and betting against them. You're looking at Andy Reid, who is one of the top game planners and just capable. He's one of those coaches that is just phenomenal at adjusting and building a game plan to beat a team. And I think the Steelers' biggest threat to themselves or to them is themselves with Matt Canada.
Yeah.
Because again, we've talked about this at length. Neither of us agree Matt Canada and Ben Roethlisberger work well together. Obviously, they're getting Juju and Najee back. How effective are those guys going to be for this game? We don't know. But it is.
Yeah, we don't know. One thing I will say is, as the season's gone on, Ben Roethlisberger has gotten more comfortable in this RPO style offense of Matt Canada's. And I mean, I think we're going to see a different Ben Roethlisberger on Sunday, because he's played the last 3 weeks under the impression that Baltimore was going to be his swan song and his retirement game. He was like, okay, I'm playing. I want to get some good games in there to finish my career at the end of the season. And all of a sudden he's got playoffs. And he's looking at this going, man, I can go out like every single one of us dreamed as teenagers, win a championship and walk away from the game. You know, and on the other side of the ball, Cam Hayward's thinking the same thing. And so I think they're going to be keying on TJ Watt so much that Cam Hayward is going to have himself a monster game. And this is going to be much closer. It's not going to be no 30-10 or anything like that. And if the Steelers can keep it within 14 points at halftime, then they have a real chance to walk away with this game, because they are lights out in the fourth quarter. You know, they've been outscoring teams like almost nobody else when it comes to fourth quarter play, and that's what it's going to be for the Steelers. They're going to have to win this on a game-winning drive from Ben Roethlisberger. And who knows, man? I'm hoping for it, and I'm picking the Steelers because I cannot pick against them.
Fair enough. I hear you. But for myself, I struggle to pick against the Chiefs with this, just because, again, the Steelers have been a lot better in the last couple weeks of the season. But it's the Chiefs and it's Patrick Mahomes, and for me, I struggle to bet against that. And I do think that if you get Patrick Mahomes on his game, it's going to be good. Again, TJ, they're going to be focusing on him, making sure he doesn't have himself a good game. Cameron Hayward, he's going to potentially have some options. But I really think the offense for the Chiefs is going to be just on point. They're going to be lights out. But I also think the Steelers, their defense needs to be on point to get somewhere, and the Steelers offense needs to be on point all game, and that's where I have the issues, is that I don't think the Steelers have a bad offense. I just think they need to be on point all game just to be able to compete. I see this game going one of two ways. Either the Chiefs just completely blow the Steelers out of the water, or it turns into a situation of where it is a close game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's just it. Like, if the Steelers' offense shows up for 4 full quarters, then it's going to be a monster game. Because we've seen how many times they put up 20-plus in the fourth quarter alone. And they've played one-quarter football so many times this season that I hope to God that somehow they can come out and actually play a full game on offense. Because if they do, no team can stop them. I've said that all season. If they could play 4 full quarters, a full game, no team could stop the Steelers offense. But they never do. You know, they go in at halftime, they make their adjustments, it starts to build a little bit in the third quarter, and then they go off in the fourth. And that's why they have to keep it close. You know, if they can get to Pat Mahomes, sack him once, twice with TJ, and if they really do start double teaming, triple teaming TJ Watt, that's going to open up that other side for Alex Highsmith. And he has shown this year that he's not afraid to get in there and sack those quarterbacks, and he's got some good speed as well. You know, he's just overlooked because you got the defensive MVP of TJ Watt on the other side, so everybody's always looking there. Highsmith had a really good season, and so I think we see some big plays from him as well. But that's just it. We got to sack Mahomes, and we got to pick him off at least once. It's time for Minkah Fitzpatrick to make that money.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, float back there, you know, cover your zone, but keep your eyes on Tyreek Hill the whole game. You know, if he throws up a duck, you make sure you come down with that.
This is going to be a phenomenal Sunday night football game, though. I think.
Yeah.
I think you couldn't have a better Sunday night football. I think the only other game that you could say would be a better matchup would be the Bengals and the Raiders.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Where I'm happy it's not, though, because if the Steelers were playing in any other time slot this weekend, I don't even think they stand a shot. But because it's Sunday night football prime time, that is where Ben Roethlisberger has shined so many times. He has had so many game-winning drives in the fourth quarter playing Sunday nights, and I think we're going to get to see another one. And I said it last week, if they get in, and if they can get past the Chiefs, they go all the way to the Super Bowl.
That will be a phenomenal story if they can do it. We will just have to kind of take a look at this next week and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, depending on how stressful that game is tomorrow, I might not be going to work on Monday.
There might be a 2-day hangover type situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to the Monday night football game, we have the San Francisco 40, or not the San Francisco 49ers, the LA Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. That should also
we've had a Monday night game during the wild card weekend. It's strange.
It is a very strange feeling.
I thought they'd do 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. I didn't think they'd throw a Monday nighter in there.
Which, that's what it was last year, is they had 3 on Saturday and 3 on Sunday, and it worked really, really well. So I'm kind of curious to know why they moved that Monday game. Were they worried about there being a COVID outbreak situation and having to flex a game potentially?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what it is. I wonder if there was a scheduling issue or something with the stadium. You know, maybe something else is going on, so they couldn't have it on Saturday.
Yeah. But regardless, this should also be a good matchup. You know, you have two teams that at the beginning of the year both looked phenomenal. And then throughout the season, they've had moments of being like, okay, like so-and-so. But then they've also had moments of where they've bounced back and looked really, really well. And I think throughout the year, they both won a game against each other. I think they're 1-1 against each other. I would need to look at that again. But yeah, it is. This should be a very interesting game to look at because I can't really pinpoint a team who is going to win. I like the Cardinals in that because I think they are a better team. And I do have some questions about Sean McVay with his adjustments because for me, that's his biggest issue is not being able to adjust mid-game.
Yeah.
But if he gets the game plan right from the start, the Rams are a nearly impossible team to beat. And when Matt Stafford is playing with that proper game plan, they are even more unstoppable, not necessarily the same way that they were with Jared Goff. Because Matthew Stafford can do everything that Sean McVay wants, as opposed to Jared Goff, who you don't know which Goff you were getting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you know, I was high on the Cardinals for a lot of this season, but they really started to stumble near the end there. So I'm questioning a little bit whether they're going to be able to go very far in the playoffs anymore. But the Rams, I think they're going to make quick. I don't really have a lot of faith in Matt Stafford going into the playoffs. He never got a shot at the playoffs when he was playing in Detroit. So
Very
I think there's
rarely.
I think there's going to be a lot of nerves for him going in. And I mean, they were playing for home field last week and they couldn't pull it out. You know, they were close, and then Matt Stafford throws up that interception.
Yep.
And so I think that's what we're going to see again, is that the game's going to be decided by Matt Stafford, but it's going to be because he throws an interception on a game-winning drive rather than a touchdown. And I think the Cardinals walk away with it with their defense.
Yeah, this should be a really, really fun, entertaining game to watch, because I don't think anyone can really sit down and say this team's gonna win or this team's gonna win. I'm going to end up taking the Cardinals just because I believe in Kyler Murray, and I think he's just going to put himself into a situation where he's like, I'm going to will this win to happen. We have been so good this year. We've had our struggles. Even at the end of the year, we've had our struggles. I'm just going to make it just so that we play a really, really solid, strong game, and we are taking it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the Cardinals take it for sure. And I mean, Kyler Murray should go off. I think he's going to have a big game, but he needs to make sure that he doesn't get that tunnel vision of pass, 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 quarterback rush myself. He's got to remember, he's got a big guy in James Conner standing behind him. He's got to make sure to hand that ball off and let Conner do his thing as well. If they can put up 70 to 100 yards rushing with James Conner, that's going to open up the field for Kyler Murray so much more. And at that point, I think they just tear apart that Rams defense.
Yeah, but we also need to remember, I think it's something that we kind of forgot to mention, is Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald could completely take over this game too. It does not matter what Matthew Stafford does on the Rams side. If Aaron Donald truly wants this game and goes into this Super Saiyan mode like we've seen him do on occasion, he can completely make this. He just picks up Kyler, who's 5'10", 200 pounds, and goes, listen, buddy, I'm going to put you in my arms, and we're just going to run to the other end zone. You're just going to accept it, okay?
Yeah. Well, and that is exactly why Kyler Murray needs to remember that he's got James Conner there. Because that is what's going to keep Aaron Donald honest. If you keep handing that ball off to Conner, then Aaron Donald can't just focus on that big, brutish pass rush, get to the quarterback. He's going to have to play some finesse defense, make sure he's helping stop the run. And that will keep him hesitant as to whether or not he's going to go for the quarterback. And so it'll come down to whether or not Aaron Donald picks the right play-action plays to go after Kyler Murray.
Which he is so good at, though, anyways.
He is really good at that. And that's what it's going to come down to. Some of those play actions, if Kyler Murray can get the ball out and throw it deep down the field and make connections, that's where the Cardinals will start to run away with it.
Yeah, I hear you. This is actually a really, really good year for the playoffs, as opposed to what we were looking at last year. Because there were just some games we were looking at last year going like, oh, great, we have Washington versus Tampa Bay.
Right.
And then we had Chicago going into New Orleans. We're like, wow, these are lovely games. But I feel like with every single game this year, it's actually worth watching. We're actually going to get some really good games. Going into the next week, though, when we're sitting here talking again, we could be saying, wow, like there was some games that we thought were going to be really, really good that turned out to be really, really bad. Like, for instance, we could see the Raiders go into Cincinnati and put up 40 points while the Bengals put up nothing. We're like, oh, okay, that was our game of the week pick there, and that turned out to be incorrect. Or we could see the Steelers go into Kansas City and do the same thing.
Right? Yeah, at least on paper going in, it looks much better this year. I mean, we got to remember last year, very strange year in the NFL. Yep. That COVID year, no fans in the stands. Like, there were some guys that just had way too much of an advantage, not truly playing road game.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of these teams that rely so heavily on their fans making noise.
And that home field advantage, yeah.
Right? Without it, they fell completely flat. They didn't have that home field advantage.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think we've got some better teams in the playoffs this year, and why I think it's going to be a lot more good games.
Yeah, there's without a doubt going to be a good week and for football. This is probably one of the better playoff wildcard weekends we've seen in a couple of years.
Right? And am I the only one that thinks it's so bizarre how many analysts and experts are completely counting out the Tennessee Titans, despite being number one overall in the AFC, getting that first week bye? none of them are picking the Titans to go to the Super Bowl, and that is just crazy to me. We've got
Well,
all these great games this week, but we're forgetting about the fact that we don't even get to see Derrick Henry or Aaron Rodgers this week.
which is
And
just the
those two
thing, yeah.
guys going to be lights out. I have a feeling no matter what happens this weekend or next weekend, we might still be seeing Aaron Rodgers, Derrick Henry Super Bowl.
As much as I would hate to see Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl, and if that's the case, I probably might not be watching the Super Bowl. But yeah, it is.
Sure you will.
I would get my arm twisted, very lightly, be like, okay, yeah, I'll watch. I'm not gonna be happy about it, but I'll do it. But yeah, and we are forgetting that the Titans, going back to your point, how so many analysts are basically discounting the Titans and what they're capable of doing. But yeah, they have been that number one AFC team this year. Has the AFC been more of a weaker division or conference this year? Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Oh, yeah.
But they're getting Derrick Henry back, and we talked all year of how good Jonathan Taylor was, how he was just completely taking the team on his back and going, okay, everyone, let's go. But we're forgetting Derrick Henry is he's not only taking his entire team, throwing them on his back, but he's also with one arm pushing the entire opposite team away. He's like, no, go away, go away. If I want to get 230 yards today, I'm going to get 230 yards.
I think if Derrick Henry hadn't taken that injury, we don't talk about Jonathan Taylor as much this season as we have. Because if Derrick Henry's in there, he probably shows up Jonathan Taylor every week. And even if he has that monster week, everybody goes, yeah, but look at what Henry did.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, yeah, you got 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, but Henry looked at that and went, okay, well, I got 250 and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
And that's just the thing, is Tennessee's defense has been better this year, which has helped them. And, Ryan Tannehill with Derrick Henry out, I think we all kind of looked at him and went like, okay, well, you don't really got your offense anymore, so let's see what you do. And they still were a pretty decent football team.
Right. They hung around enough to be able to get that first overall seed, get that bye week to get Derrick Henry a little bit of extra rest. I think they come out next week looking like beasts. I'm hoping they come out next week to face my Steelers and lose again. That would be ideal for me. I would be a happy camper.
I bet you would be.
Yeah.
But now moving over to the the NFC side of it, with the Packers, this is one of those teams where I think a lot of people are looking at them going like they are the Super Bowl, contending team. But here's why I'm saying that the Packers won't, is because of their defense. And, right now we look at, their offense can do no wrong, and Aaron Rodgers just kind of looks bored out there playing, where he could honestly snap the ball, look over into the stands, put his hands on his hips and go, look at that, and then throw the ball for an 80-yard touchdown to Davante Adams and just make it look effortless. But the defense needs to prove that they can keep this team in the playoffs or keep them in games. And the fact that sometimes this year the defense just has completely fallen apart on them. Hell, the Bears almost beat them, when they faced in their second matchup. And, when you're saying the Bears almost beat your defense, that's not a good sign.
Right. Well, what is it they always say? Your offense will get you to the playoff. Your defense is what wins you the championship.
Yep.
And even in today's, I agree with you completely. That Green Bay defense is back, and that is what's going to let them down if they don't make it to the Super Bowl. It'll be because it comes down to a shootout game against Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott or Tom Brady, and those other guys all have solid defenses to back them up. Yep. Aaron Rodgers does not have that.
Yep. I believe, with all those teams that you said, with the Bucs, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys, you look at all those teams and you go, they all have good defenses. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers might be able to drop 30 points on them, but, at the same point, Murray, Prescott, and Brady, they could easily go, okay, well, you dropped 30 on my defense, who's quality. I'm going to drop 45 on yours.
Exactly. See, and that's why I have faith in my guys this weekend, because defense wins championships, and
defense does win championships.
Defense.
again, this week is going to be phenomenal for playoffs. We are doing a little bit of a shorter podcast today just because I think yourself and myself both want to be around to watch every moment for these playoffs. It's going to be good. But yeah, so all the games, again, phenomenal looking games. There's going to be a lot more conversation next week about kind of the head coaching and general manager stuff. We didn't really touch on the general manager stuff, but the Vikings, the Bears, and the Giants all fired their general manager. Actually, the Giants didn't. Their GM retired.
Yeah.
But there are 3 general managers spots open. And after this weekend, we might still see some fires happen.
Well, yeah, that's just it. Some of these teams just snuck into the playoffs, and that's the only reason their coach still has a job right now. If they completely fall flat this weekend and can't do anything, then that ownership may still look at them and go, you know what, we still need to make a change because one and done is not good enough for the nation.
A guy that I think if they lose a playoff game and lose it badly, that I can see getting fired is Zach Taylor for the Bengals. I know a lot of people, going into this last offseason said they needed to fire Zach Taylor because obviously his first year as head coach was bad. They end up getting the first overall pick with Joe Burrow. And then his year with Joe Burrow was also bad. And,
Joe Burrow did get hurt.
He did get hurt.
So he lost Burrow.
He did. But at the same point, they were still looking at it.
That's what it shows is that Zach Taylor, without Joe Burrow, cannot win.
Yeah.
And so it's very much Joe Burrow's the guy there. And so, yeah, I think you're right. If the Bengals go out and just put up a horrible game today and just get blown out by the Raiders, then, yeah, Zach Taylor's out. And they're going, look, we need a coach that can coach the rest of this team. We've got a phenomenal quarterback and wide receiver tandem in Chase and Burrow. But what is everybody else doing out there? Why is the coach not getting everybody else ready? Yep. If one of these guys goes down with an injury, we still need to be a playoff-ready team.
I agree
and with Zach Taylor, I don't think they are.
No, I agree with you pretty wholeheartedly there. But yeah, this is kind of bringing us to the end of the podcast this week. Like I said, we are all kind of getting ready for the playoffs, but we'd like to thank you for all stopping by and joining us here today. We will see you again next Saturday. Same bat time, same bat place. Thank you very much for all coming out.
Yes, thank you all for coming. Enjoy Super Wildcard Weekend. Let's go watch some football.
Thank you.